I want to speak about why you are politicking your desires. And also, why do we treat the word and the experience of desire as like a cuss word or something that is like not the boogeyman under the bed, but the wishes that we want nobody to see? This is my second time recording this video, so hopefully it saves this time. But I am currently in the beginning processes and starting a new research paper that, fingers crossed, will turn into a residency. But I am really anchoring this inquiry, I guess I could say, in the desire, and in their surveillance. But for this conversation, I want to speak on desire from 3 different vantage points. And because I am a chatty patty, I do have my sticky notes to keep me on track. But the first one is going to be the desire of lust. Desire and lust are 2 words that we treat as like, shh, don't say that, but we like smile when we say it, right? We're used to the demonizing of our desires and of our lust. And so we fall into the trap of like, lust is bad. In the same breath and same concept that like anger and joy aren't good or bad, they just are. I want you to have that in-depth understanding that lust and desire and the yearning for these things, that experience of yearning for your desires to be met, that experience of yearning for your lust to be met without shame and without secrecy, right? Having that in-depth understanding without shame. And I think we have to really think about whose voice are we following when it comes to whatever rule book of respectability as it relates to your love life. Whose voice is that? And is it yours? And we have respectability politics in one circle, and then we have desirability politics in another circle. And a lot of us, when it comes to our dating experiences, those things overlap. And now we have very murky waters on like, what do we want to experience and what are the rules that we should follow? And then I watched this online, but my mom said this, and then my friend said this. The older I get, from a personal perspective and also like from a researcher perspective, understand why people say like, be mindful of what you share about your relationship, because your desires and lusts also live in the experience of play. And everybody's not going to understand how you play, how you communicate, all of these things. And I am intentionally not giving a definition on desire, lust, and I intentionally don't give it on love, because I don't want you to limit your lived experience that has substance, that has nuance, that has like a cultural context and understanding and perspective, to limit it to a string of words. And I think so many of us get so attached to one thing. And the perfect example that I could use for this is astrology. But I'm a Libra, but I'm a Virgo, but I'm a Leo. And like all of those characteristics, like you are just white knuckle fists holding on to without like seeing the nuance by the things, right? And I think a lot of things in life, we hold on to the mere textbook definition because this is what it said, this is what it said, this is what it has to be. And I don't think people understand that life rarely operates in the textbook definition. There's always some type of technicality. There's always the nuance There's always the gray area. And I need us to be more compassionate. The first word that came to mind, if I'm honest, is flexible, but that's too whimsy. But I need us to be more compassionate to ourselves, and not only in the exploration of desire, in the exploration of lust, but also the exploration of self as you get older. As you get older. And when I speak about the rule books of respectability in which we hold to ourselves, I notice a lot of people, yes, it can come from family. Yes, it can come from self. Yes, it can come from social media. But we don't speak on the depths in which our friends' voices influence our dating desire decisions. And this leads to my second objective, which is going to be the desire of care and consideration. And I think so many of us, and I'm speaking from like the masses, and I always have to make this disclaimer that when I'm speaking about love, rarely ever, like it's a 0.01% chance or reference from my personal experience, okay? I don't give any personal context unless stated. But many of us have confused human decency with romantic consideration. And I think that's why we are experiencing dating woes, right? And I think about a lot of people have vocalized their lived experience of not being seen, not being heard. So I had to become the smartest. So I had to get the highest title in corporate. So I had to spend my whole entire life in the gym. So eventually you saw me. So eventually I got the attention after I did the hard work and labor, and not understanding that love and care is your birthright. And unfortunately, so many people at multiple different intersections of our life, whether it was home life, whether it was friendships, whether it was school, whether it was outer school, whether it was work, don't uphold care through the lens of human decency in the same way that they don't uphold consideration through like a human decency. And so a lot of times, the only time that people are considered is when they are at professional conferences or networking events. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's actually talk about it, right? Because you kind of get a scarlet letter when you are rude or off-putting at these events that are rooted in respectability politics, rooted in this like shell of yourself, rooted in everybody show up as their LinkedIn version of their self, or everybody show up as their resume. And so there is this neutral breath of respectability. There is this like common breath of consideration. But what happens when that is the only vantage point of consideration that you have experienced? And again, going back to my first objective, when I was saying that like you need to be mindful of the voices that are guiding you in your love life, in your dating life, in your desires, in your lust, if it's not yours. Because you don't know what that is rooted in, and a lot of times it's rooted in fear or ignorance. A lot of times, especially if you are getting advice from social media, which a lot of people are, whether they admit it or not, and because you don't have like that experiential learning aspect of what it means to live your life, what it means to live in dating, what it means to live in love, what it means to live in your desires, what it means to live in your lust, then you have like this corporate rule book guiding your ship of desires, your ship of care, and your ship of consideration. And that's why a lot of relationships feel so transactional. People don't understand that love is a free exchange. The exchange for connection, the exchange for intimacy, the exchange for emotion. When I say intimacy, I'm not referencing physical intimacy. The exchange of warmth, the exchange of care, the exchange of consideration. And that goes to my last objective, the desire of love. So many of us limit our understanding of love to romantic, and that is the biggest disservice that you can do yourself. Because love is something that is all encompassing. You need to understand love of community, the communal love. You need to understand the love of humanity. You need to understand the love of family. You need to understand the love of friends. You need to understand love through the lens of protection of children. You need to understand love thy neighbor. You need to understand environmental love. Because you are taught care and consideration at its raw and most authentic form. And through those pillars, you are able to understand in depthly not only that love is your birthright, but that love is a free exchange. The gift of reciprocity. You understand those things so in depthly that it bleeds into how you are articulating your wants, needs, and desires when it comes to romantic partnership. But the sentence stems of I want, don't change. I need, don't change. But that is also the measure of vulnerability in which so many people are like scared to vocalize. That I want you to call me. I need you to show up. I love you so much, but I need you to show up. And if you don't, I have to leave. Those raw and transparent and most authentic forms of love, forms of yearning, forms of desire, in which so many of us suppress. So many of us suppress due to the hyper surveillance of putting our romantic interests, loves, and experience on social media for the consumption of others. And that is where we will begin our next conversation.